Hello, welcome back to U.S. History 2. Today we're going to be talking about America's Gilded Age, so the Industrial Revolution in America. So in our last video we talked about westward expansion, how people are moving out west, making farms, mining for gold, doing the cowboy thing. But today we're going to talk about how do the largest industries in America sort of develop, and what cities are going to look like. That's what the next couple of videos are going to handle. All right, so a little bit of context, right? So in America going into the late 19th century, we're going to start seeing two earlier philosophical ideas that are going to really shape how these large businesses are going to operate. So the first main philosophy that we'll talk about is Adam Smith's idea of capitalism. So many economists and historians have named Adam Smith the founder of capitalism, the father of it. So in 1776, going way back to like the Revolutionary era and stuff, he is going to write a book called The Wealth of Nations. So in The Wealth of Nations, he is going to come up with this term. It's a French phrase that says laissez-faire. So laissez-faire means like let do, leave alone, hands off. He says the best economy is one that has minimal government intervention. So that's Adam Smith's main idea. He says that the government that governs least governs best. So the government shouldn't really have any say in anything that's happening in the economy. They shouldn't set tariffs and stuff. The government needs laissez-faire, hands off the economy. Let the economy do what the economy is going to do. So Adam Smith believed that an unregulated economy is best. That supply and demand and economic production, it's sort of like a flow, right? There's ups and downs with the economy, but eventually it's going to level itself out. So Adam Smith called this the invisible hand. So if you just let the economy do what it's going to do, there's going to be ups, there's going to be downs, but eventually it will find its equilibrium and level out. So the second philosophical idea that you need to know about going into this Gilded Age in America comes from this guy Herbert Spencer. So Herbert Spencer is a British philosopher and politician. He is going to come up with this term called survival of the fittest. So he says that people who are more successful, richer people, they are just better. They're genetically better than anyone else. The rich are genetically better than the poor. It doesn't matter that we're all humans. He says that all humans are not created equal. So he gets this idea of survival of the fittest from Charles Darwin. So Charles Darwin is the scientist of the earlier 19th century. He is going to come up with this idea called evolution. So evolution, that all beings evolve over time, humans included. So all Charles Darwin was talking about was like beetles and monkeys and stuff, but he wasn't really talking about society. Herbert Spencer is going to adapt this idea of evolution, and he's going to come up with this new term called social Darwinism, saying that some people are just better than others. Some races of people, the rich are better than the poor. They're going to later use it that white people are better than any other race on Earth and stuff. So this social Darwinism is going to come into play a lot during the 19th and early 20th century. This idea of nationalism and that Europe is better than everyone else, so that's going to allow them to take over the rest of the world. America is going to adopt these ideas as well. So so this guy Herbert Spencer says that all life is a struggle, and those who do what they can to survive will be better in the end, right? And this is going to justify a lot of these titans of industry to really, justify like how they treat their workers, how they treat the economy and others. So the major entrepreneurs at this time, they're going to consolidate wealth and power, and they're going to become some of the most important people in the country going into this time. They're going to help build America into the strongest economy in the world. So let's talk about monopolies and trust. So these titans of industry, right? We have Andrew Carnegie, John D. Rockefeller, Cornelius Vanderbilt, J.P. Morgan, like the banks and stuff. These people are going to create monopolies in their industries. They're going to become the wealthiest and most powerful people in the entire United States. So let's talk about Monopoly. So if you've ever played the game Monopoly before, the whole goal of the game is to buy up all the properties, so everyone has to go to you. Every time they land on your space, you get a paycheck, right? And this is no different from real life Monopoly. So there's a couple of different ways on how to get a Monopoly. The first one is going to be this guy Andrew Carnegie. He's going to come up with the steel industry. So in this, the way he's going to get a monopoly over steel is through vertical integration. So the whole idea of this is that you don't want to pay some other middleman, right? Because if you're paying a middleman to do another service for you, another business to do something for you to help your business, that means you're giving away your wealth. You want to keep all your wealth and all the profits for yourself. So Carnegie is going to own the steel industry. And so what he's going to do is he's going to buy the mines. He's going to buy the mines that mine the iron ore. He's going to buy the railroads that ship the iron ore to the factories, where the factory is going to melt down the iron ore, make it into steel, and then he's going to own the railroads that are going to ship the steel across the country. So every step of the process, if you want to get steel, you have to go through Carnegie. He is going to own most of the steel in the United States. And this is the time where these large cities are building skyscrapers using Carnegie's steel. So the Empire State Building in New York City, right, built with Carnegie steel. So that's this whole idea of vertical integration, right, is to control every aspect of production in the process of steel. That way you don't have to pay another company to do a different part of the process. You get to keep all profits to yourself. So this is what Carnegie is going to do to get a lot of his wealth, is by owning every step in this steel making process. So the next industry that we'll talk about is the oil industry. So there's going to be this large company in America called Standard Oil. And Standard Oil is going to be owned by this guy, John D. Rockefeller. So if you ever go to New York City, Rockefeller Plaza, named after this guy, John D. Rockefeller. So Rockefeller is going to eventually own 95% of all the U.S. oil refineries. So if you need to get oil, you have to go through John D. Rockefeller. So how he's able to control 95% of the oil refineries in the U.S. is through horizontal integration. He's going to own this big oil corporation, and he's going to buy off all of his competitors. He's going to buy all the smaller mom and pop oil shops until he owns everything himself. So if you want to fill up your gas tank, right, you have to go through Rockefeller's oil to do it. So this is what we call horizontal integration. So he's buying up all the smaller industries to make one large corporation. So these large companies, they're going to form something called trust. All right. So Rockefeller is going to own this company called Standard Oil, but this is going to be a whole corporation, right? And just like the stock market today, that businesses like Apple and Amazon and Microsoft, right? These large corporations, they're not owned just by one person. Instead, it's owned by a bunch of different shareholders. These trusts. So whoever owns the most amount of that pie, right? Think of like a big pie. Whoever owns the largest share of it owns, controls the company. So John D. Rockefeller is going to open up his business, Standard Oil, to the stock market. And there's going to be a lot of investors who invest in his company, buy shares, but Rockefeller is going to control it because he owns most of the shares. So this is how most businesses, large corporations, are ran in the United States today. If they're a publicly owned company, that's what that means, that they own different shares. So, I could own a share of Apple. It doesn't mean I control the whole Apple corporation. I just own like a little sliver of it, right? And whoever owns the most amount of it becomes the head of that company. So the people who are able to afford large amounts of these trusts are the super wealthy. And the super wealthy, they buy large amounts of these trusts and stuff, which is going to give them more wealth. So we're going to see that more and more wealth in America is going to be held by fewer and fewer hands. So let's talk about the impacts of this, okay? So what we see is that these monopolies, these consolidated industries, are going to buy out their competition. There's not going to be a bunch of smaller, steel corporations that could compete with Rockefeller. There's going to, be these large monopolies, and the reason why they're a monopoly is because they bought out all their competition, and all the profits are going back to them because who else are you going to buy steel from? You have to go to Carnegie. Who else are you going to buy oil from? You have to go to Rockefeller. If you want to ride the railroads, you have to go to Vanderbilt because he owns all the railroads. If you want to take out a bank loan, you have to go to J.P. Morgan because he owns all the banks. So these guys, they're getting wealthy, and they're taking more money from the American people. So by the 1870s, right, these super wealthy businesses, these large trusts, are able to influence state and federal governments. So this is a very famous political cartoon showing this, depicting these robber barons, right? They are robbing the American people of their liberties, of their wealth, and they are going to use their money to influence Congress. So you can see Congress is discussing and stuff in the front, but then in the background you have all these large trusts. Like in the middle you could see Standard Oil and the steel industry. They're watching over Congress and paying them off. So this is like some of the height of corruption in the United States government, because the super wealthy people are able to influence society at every level. So this unprecedented amount of wealth and influence is going to create a new class of Americans. So this is what we call these massive estates. We're going to see these large businesses, these wealthy families going to create these mansions, these huge McMansions and stuff. And in these giant mansions, it's going to be covered in gold. But the thing is, it's not actual gold that they have. It's not just like solid gold. Instead, all the gold things that you'll see in these big mansions are gilded. That means that, they would paint some gold leaf on top of things. So it looks super fancy. It looks like their whole mansions are made out of solid gold. But underneath it all, it looks like there's rot and things falling apart. And this is a good allegory for the Gilded Age in itself. This is where we get that term, the Gilded Age. So the famous American writer Mark Twain is actually why we call this the Gilded Age. In his book, The Gilded Age, A Tale of Today, he's going to criticize this unchecked growth and exploitation of the wealthy classes, and he's going to expose a lot of people to the rotten underbelly of these Gilded Ages, right? So this is an example of the Biltmore estate in Asheville, North Carolina. This is where the Vanderbilts, the people who own most of the rail lines in the United States, where they lived, right? They're going to build this huge mansion, one of the largest mansions in the United States, built by his Vanderbilt's grandson in 1889 and until 1895. So these giant estates. And then up in here you can see a picture of what I mean by gilded, right? So you can see that this guy is painting something that's like rusted, making it look more fancy by covering it in gold paint. But underneath it all, we see that is actually rotting at the foundation, right? So the way that these super wealthy people are getting their money is through very like dirty and rotting practices. So in the other corner, you can see a political cartoon that really describes what this Gilded Age is like, right? So you have a worker, he is getting squished by low wages and high rent. People aren't making a lot of money, but rent keeps going up. And the people who are lowering the wages and upping the rent is the pole man, the owners of these businesses, the managers. So a lot of historians and sociologists today have said that America is going through its second Gilded Age. We see a lot of correlations between the Gilded Age of the the late 19th century, early 1900s, to what we have today. So back then, the wealthiest 1% of Americans, these large monopolies, own most businesses, most of the economy in the United States. Wages were low for workers. Rent was increasing. And what we see today is a lot of the similar things, right? We have these large corporations, like Amazon and Microsoft, and we have Tesla and everything. And these large corporations, this 1% of Americans, like the Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and Mark Zuckerbergs, they own more wealth than the other 99% of America combined. So there's a lot of connections between what we see 100 years ago and what we see today. So, that whole term like, history sort of repeats itself, this is why this stuff's relevant. So we could see what happened then, so maybe we could do something about it now. But, we'll see. All right. So this is a good political cartoon showing the working classes, right? They are holding up. They're struggling to hold up all of these captains of industry, these robber barons who are getting super fat off the wealth of their workers. And then this is also a political cartoon of a bunch of workers and smaller businesses. They're giving sacks of money over to these trusts and monopolies. And then that cartoon we've mentioned before, right? It's how these robber barons are able to line the pockets of political figures and corrupt the government. So with this, right, there's it's very important to know, like, how does America amass its wealth? How do these big corporations come into play? So this is like the big industries, the robber barons, the people who are making America into the largest economy in the world. But we need to know, how did they actually get this wealth? So that's it with the Gilded Age, talking about like the wealthiest people in the Gilded Age. In the next video, we'll talk about how do the workers live, right? How about the people who are on the ground doing the work, working in the factories? So stay tuned for that one, and I'll catch you on the next video.